So I'm here with Dami Olatuyi, who not only voted Leave, but was campaigning for Leave. But he wrote a Guardian article recently supporting a people's vote, and he's going to be on the march for a people's vote. And at this stage, I think it's fair to say that you would probably go Remain, because you can't see any deal coming back that would probably be acceptable to you.
Yes, I'm a Remain voter at this point because of many things, because of the way that the government has gone about negotiations, because of the motivations of lots of the Brexiteers. We thought we were getting an orderly soft Brexit, and we're not. We're getting a scrambled, jumbled up Brexit at any cost.
Yeah.
And I think the Irish border is the best example of that. And yeah, we're in a situation where the country, in terms of its future, in terms of, especially for young people, it's better for us to have kind of those European opportunities available to us.
Yeah, that platform, that common networking, and that solid foundation. But what was your motivation for voting Leave in the first place and being drawn to the sort of Leave cause?
Well, I think it was. I think I felt the same thing that lots of Brexiteers feel now, which is that. Firstly, it was wrong not to have a referendum on the European Union since we joined, even though the argument is there were elections during that time.
Nevertheless, it was something that was taken out of the public hands. This isn't for you to discuss. This isn't for you to get involved with. And you're like, oi, that's not the way to do things.
Exactly. So that was one of my issues. Also, I felt that it was a revolutionary thing that could take the UK into the future, something that would kind of be positive and galvanise the UK for a better future.
So it was more about shaking up the UK or shaking up kind of like the EU and Europe?
No, it was definitely about the UK for me.
Right, so it was very UK centric.
Yeah, very
like
UK.
Press buttons, move it all around.
Yeah,
there,
I mean,
open up some opportunities, give it a breath of fresh air.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
right?
I think the initial. I mean, the reason why I campaigned was because the Leave campaign seemed more optimistic.
Yeah.
And I think it still is actually more optimistic. I think the problem is that, there's this expectation of a buccaneering UK, and I think that kind of comes back to a nostalgic nationalism, which is the way Tony Blair described it. But I think what Remainers and Europeans need to do better is to kind of explain and promote the positive sides of being a part of the EU. For example, we get this anti-democratic argument that the EU does X, Y, and Z, when it's not often explained that we are part of that decision-making process. And lots of this is actually for our benefit. So I think that optimism was something that attracted me to the voting campaign in the first place as well.
Because Remainers were having to justify the status quo and trying to protect it, and then David Cameron set such a short time limit. People shouldn't do this. We'll just scare them over the line, and we felt that. We felt that as well. We felt that as well. So we'll come onto the future stuff in a bit, because that is important. Because if you are going to ditch Brexit, ditch it like a dead weight, and then go off into the future with future opportunities. What are they going to be in a way that satisfies future needs, but also fix a lot of problems? But we'll come on to that in a bit, because after campaigning for Leave and voting Leave, you were telling me before, slowly over time, sort of transitioned in further and further away from it. So what have been kind of the key points for you on that journey?
Well, I didn't know much about trade when I voted, so I thought that this would mean more trade and trading with other parts of the world.
Right. So the notion that we were shut in, and then if you come out, then suddenly you just go 1, 2, 3 deals, 4, 5, 6 deals like that. Right.
Well, no, I didn't think it would be that simple, but I thought there were more opportunities in different parts of the world, particularly the developing world. But as I say, I didn't know anything about trade when I voted. So since then, as more information, for example, about trade has come out, we can see, for example, that we trade more with Ireland than we do with Australia and New Zealand, and I think it's Canada put together. It's the realities of having a neighbour who you trade with very much is very important. So trade is just one thing in terms of information that's come out. And I think a lot of the motivations of the senior Brexiteers, the ultra Brexiteers, aren't necessarily for a Brexit that makes the lives of everybody in the country better. I think there are lots of private interests who are interested in tax avoidance and minimizing tax liabilities in the UK.
So that difference in vision between the top Brexiteers and then the Leave voters. The Leave voters and what the Leave voters, you know, were expecting.
Exactly. I think one... And I think there's... I mean, I don't think, for example, Boris cares very much about immigration. I think it's an easy way to score political points and say, well, you know, it's too many. We have no control over our borders, and you know, no control over our borders. That's a crazy thing to say, but that's the impression people have. Well, I think things like that are used to score points with parts of the public.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the control over the borders thing winds me up. Because we get what is it now? 40 million visitors per annum in this country. People are flooding over the borders and back. So it's not about border control where we check passports anyway. It's about rights to stay, rights to get employment and rights to stay. And that's where you should be focused. And if you're just talking about our borders are breached, you know, that's quite kind of like dog whistle stuff. You know,
exactly.
Our walls are down, they're flooding in. Mentality.
Exactly. And there's another thing, Nigel Farage and the kind of images he promoted, even before the referendum. I think they had that picture. I can't remember what the caption was. Breaking Point, I think. There was that one.
Right, yes.
So you could kind of see what kind of vision they had and what they were going for. So yeah, you could kind of see that it was a bit different to what a lot of people wanted and thought was right.
They were trying to sell everything to everyone. So for you personally...
Sorry, can I come in on that immigration point, right? I think it's really important. We have to say that even as part of the EU, we had an emergency brake on immigration. The UK is an island, so it's easier to control borders that way. And also on top of that, on a legal basis, in terms of international law, we have the right to refuse entry to anyone who's deemed dangerous, any people with criminal records, any people suspected of having terrorist-related activities. So there are lots of controls on immigration, and I think that point needs to be made quite strongly.
For sure, I mean, it's Greece and Italy that have been dealing with the boats, and we were at distance complaining about our own immigration when we had so much more capacity to control it, like physically by being in a cold sea, far away from all of these troubles. But then within the freedom of movement framework, and then, you know, on many levels, we've got mechanisms in order to...
I mean, the Home Office is one of them. I worked at an immigration law firm. And I mean, there is no idea of it being easy to get into the UK in terms of residence. People spend thousands of pounds on applications for indefinite leave to remain, and so on. So the immigration point is one that upsets me.
Because there hasn't been enough investment in it as well. Investment in the communities that need it, investment in the Home Office and actually treating people right when they're coming to this country and trying to take up work, or investment in educating people about their options. You know, and what do you get? Then you get a Home Office that does Windrush, or that is... in terms of academics, because my area, so many have had deportation threats, you know, just come out of nowhere, and now we're going to try and drag and drop 3.5 million EU citizens into that settled status system. And you know the Home Office isn't going to be able to handle it. So that's one thing looming that is going to cause a lot of stress.
I mean, and it just continues, and we can see across different industries. There's already been a percentage hit to GDP. I worked also at the Nursing and Midwifery Council, which is the body that kind of regulates the behaviour of nurses across the UK. And there are serious problems there at the moment because the funding for the organisation comes from registration fees for nurses. And what they're seeing is a drop-off in the number of nurses who are coming from the EU, and also people who are renewing their registrations within the UK. So that's happening, and that's about the NHS, and we can see that, and the NMC's got the numbers, and it's going down drastically, and they don't know what's going to happen. So that's just one example. So I think as we've seen what Brexit is, I mean, you could make the argument that it's possible to have had a good Brexit if the Prime Minister had come out and said, we're going to do a national commission, and we're going to bring Scotland and Wales to the table, and we're going to bring opposition to the table, and we're going to stay in the customs union, and we're going to be part of EFTA or the EEA. Like, there's that argument that it could have worked.
Yeah, but take that first sensible step, something
right.
that's manageable, right, that includes everybody, and then you've got a consensus opinion that is hard for people to kind of like object to.
Exactly.
But you've got to start sensibly rather than diving for the deep end and like ignoring half the country and then just letting all these problems that you were talking about collect. So then, yeah, we've been walking through a landscape of reality which has been quite bludgeoning, really. So, if we were to have Parliament reject the deal, then a people's vote in which the public reject the deal, and so we're effectively staying, what's the positive vision or what's the positive path that we then put in place?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that the EU isn't perfect, but what we need to do is we just need to be better at communicating the benefits of EU membership. Yep. I think that's what it is. Yep. So I think there's enough about the EU which is good for us to be able to be convincing when we go out to the public and say, actually, this is why we're part of this, and this is the benefit that it brings for us. You know, I walk past public libraries now, which are closing, which have signs in the window or plaques on the wall saying, this was part of the European Development Fund, or we got money, EU funding went towards this, and now it's closed, and you can kind of see what's going on here. So I think there's so much that we need to be better at communicating, that these are the positives, right? This is the reason why we have joint immigration policy. This is the reason why we have joint trade policy. It makes sense. This is the reason why we're in the single market. It makes sense. So I think just be better at communicating the benefits. I think that, and then on a political level as well, I think it'd be good for the Prime Minister of the country, whoever that is, to be able to kind of do a national poll, take some temperature, and see what the real issues are, and work on those directly.
So as far as you're concerned, you know, on the soul level, you are satisfied that the initial itch that you wanted scratched, the fact that we hadn't had proper discussion about this, hadn't had proper public involvement about this, we've now done that.
Yes.
We've now gone through that process. We've learned where the problem areas are. We've learned what it means to attempt to Brexit, where problems are caused, and where there has been insufficient education. So you think, now with all of that information in hand, we can say this isn't the right choice, and how we go forward needs to have the following prioritised.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's your sentiment. It's kind of like, we've learnt, so now ditch it and move forward, but these are going to be the priority areas. Probably sort of some immigration reforms, some direct democracy reforms, investment in communities, this kind of stuff.
I think, I think all of those things are good things. I'm not sure whether the immigration system needs to be reformed. I think it's already pretty difficult for random people who aren't skilled workers to take up residence in this country. I think that point should be made. But yeah, I think it's worth looking at everything. Look at some of the fishery stuff, for example, and be able to be compelling in the benefits of the EU.
So the immigration thing was never a problem for you. It was mainly about the public involvement with what was happening between the UK and the EU.
Right, exactly.
And mashing that together and getting that more involved.
Yeah, and the last point I'll make is that in relation to that, the contempt that the government is showing for Parliament in trying to implement Brexit is so ironic.
They're just trying to ram it through.
And I think it's the most ironic thing about all of this, right? In terms of taking back control and so on. We have Parliament, and we're supposed to have parliamentary sovereignty, even though, as you said, democracy isn't straightforward. It's kind of, when you actually get there, it's not
complex beast.
Right, exactly. So we have the system of Parliament that makes laws for the country. What we now have is now have an executive who say, okay, well, because you said that you want to take back control, we are now going to take control and force this through the Parliament that you said you wanted to have control. Amazing. And that's the irony of the situation.
So for you, the very reasons why you wanted this in the first place is now the very reasons why you want the people's vote. because you think the people initiated this, because the people should have been involved, and because that's your philosophy, why the hell does the executive take this away from everyone now? It needs to be back in the hands of Parliament and the people again in order to sort it out one way or the other when we know actually what the options are.
Yeah. And cool. I don't mind referendums. I mean, there are lots of people who say, well, this is, you know, we shouldn't have had a referendum. I'm not against the concept of referendums. I think referendums are perfectly fine, but it's about what happens afterwards and about having a clear picture for the country.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for your time. That was awesome. Wicked. And yeah, see you on the march then.
Yes,
100%. Excellent.